So the principle of our roundtable is to have a free debate. We are very numerous today. Some roundtables, we've got only 3 participants. We've got a lot of speakers today. We are going to try and get organized. Claudel, for example, the French writer, said that order is the pleasure of reason. And disorder is nevertheless something really interesting for creation. So we are not going to elaborate on literature, but maybe literature has a role to play here in this theme, which is the new production and consumption patterns. This is right at the core of the preoccupation of the moment. We may have converging but different approaches to the new production and consumption patterns. We are going to start with the ladies. I'm not going to introduce each and every one of you because we are very numerous and we've got only 1 hour to complete this roundtable session. Corinne, we are going to give the floor first to you because you are coming from very far away, the Auvergne region. So I thank you very much for your presence. We know that the region you represent is a very important region. When you accepted to come to this place, you certainly wondered what I was expecting from you. Yes, that's true. Well, I think the topic of your roundtable session is very interesting. Well, personally, I'm in charge of the competitiveness pole. We work on innovation, and we are working in the textile sector at the national level, and we are present on all markets, technical market, fashion and decoration. When you asked me to take the floor here, I'm in charge of the technical aspects of my job. Well, I prepared some slides, but maybe we won't have time. Maybe we could show one of your slides now, and maybe we'll see whether we can show the others later on. Well, it's up to you. It's up to you. Are those slides ready? Then we could show a few slides. Well, it's not a problem. I mean, I can. Well, just go ahead. Well, concerning textile innovation, I would like to say that the first sector that has been automated, what I'm in charge of the engineering and the innovation and production part of the sector. Today, the Jacquard machine, was the first industrialized sector in the textile industry. And later on, we saw new industrialization system emerging. I had a picture of 1910, on which we see somebody being dressed by a machine automatically. So we already see the problem met by the consumers. This is the Jacquard machine. Well, this is the input of the chemical industry that has an impact on the textile industry too. Next one, please. Here we are. You see, this is a picture of 1910. We see that the problem of the consumer, even at that time, is really essential for the production. You can see that on one side we input the fabric, there is a cutting system, a measuring system, and the textile production and the consumer are very much linked, as we can see here. Next slide, please. Well, that's a new organization model. There is a button, you click on it, and it's appearing. Well, Amazon has placed a patent in 2017, and this is the scheme of this patent. It shows that the problem between the problem of the link between the consumers and the production is really at the core of our activity. How to dress the consumers in the best and fastest possible way. So you can see that the logistics aspects are very essential here, and this is a real revolution in the connection between the consumers and the production. New actors are emerging, and the creation of value has changed. This is a Japanese study which shows that the link between the consumer and the product at the moment is, goes through an interface, which is the buying place. There is the boutique, there is the shop, the internet, and so on and so forth. So there is a multi-channel approach at the moment, which establishes this link between the consumer and the production, and we can see that there are more and more interfaces between both. I'm just going to complete. Yes, we are not going to let you go, but you've got to conclude. Yes. Well, second point, textiles are becoming intelligent at the moment. You know, they can monitor your health and so on and so forth, and the consumer becomes a real object. And the management of the production and the consumer is out of our reach, you know. You are just a data supplier. In the purchasing act, there is an effective dimension. The consumer becomes a data supplier, and this is something new in the management of the production and consumption. So how will those actors will intervene on the logistics and the data management? Well, you have opened the question. We are going to give the floor to Michael from the Design City. This is an international institute, but La Cité, this city, is involved in design, and it supports a local production but with an international opening. So how do you observe this evolution of the customer at the moment, of the consumer? Well, we tend to take into account the consumer when the consumer wants to buy something. We have to take into account what he's really expecting. We are based in Saint-Étienne, not in Paris. We are a design platform. And for those of you who work in the design world, this platform is rather well known. The last edition, the last issue of this show has attracted more than 100,000 visitors. Well, we have to explain that design goes further than designing a beautiful table or a beautiful chair, you know. But we have to take into account a societal dimension, how to create some kind of convergence between consumers and producers. Well, we talk about recycling, circular economy, and during the various roundtables we had, we found that those are very specific problems, but that are considered in each and every sector. We've got societal concern throughout our environment. This is what we have to go to. Well, we can say that we want to recreate a new link with the users and with the consumers. I can take an example. I am in charge of the Living Lab at the Design City. Those are spaces to democratize the design. The public at large, I mean the consumers, anybody can get into a co-creation approach. During a quarter of an hour, this person can discuss with the enterprise, criticize a prototype, and propose a new design aspect. So it's more than classical communication. It's a field for discussion. And with the Stuan enterprise, we have supported them and accompanied them in a project Well, that is a health organization, by the way, Orthesis and so on and so forth. So we have accompanied them for the design of a backbone belt, design. At the very beginning, they had an idea. They said, well, they want to personalize those health belts. But, well, they took the benefit of this show and this event to, pick up ideas here and there. And they have tested their product, their prototype with the consumers. They collected advices and yes, that was during a weekend. They had something like 300 or 400 tests and interviews, So, that is an informal discussion. Co-creation, who would like to talk about co-creation? Well, yes, good morning. Well, Undiscipline, well, that is an organization that designs decors, paper decors. Well, we are not really up to the standards in terms of recycling, but for co-creation, yes, that is the DNA of our enterprise. It's a young enterprise. We are just 1 year old, and we produce decor products for hotel keepers and restaurants and so on and so forth. We wanted to place at the core of our approach the creativeness and the freedom we should have with it, which was not the case until now, since for that type of product we had to move through heavy industries and therefore not easy to personalize, to customize. So we have looked for partners that would enable us to find this adaptability, this flexibility to produce products that are easy to implement. And talking about construction and co-creativity, co-creativeness, we are putting online a platform for young designers to promote their works, to find partners to execute their projects and share their experience, in terms of flooring and floor coverings. Now, your neighbors, how do you react? I saw you nodding, so who are you, by the way? Well, I'm Gregory Persay. I represent the Jonathan H. Fletcher Company. That is a styling and development bureau or office. We have two poles of activity. The first one is competition, racing. We give services to athletes. For bobsleigh, sledge, skeleton and skiing and so on and so forth. We accompany them in the development of their dressing, from the very design to the execution, and we help the brands to develop their collections. We've got stylists, modelists, and prototypists. We also are in charge or involved in sourcing too. So there is an approach to the consumer. Is it co-creative? I don't know. Yes, is it? That's what I understood when we met a few weeks ago. Yes, for the competition part, when we support or accompany the athletes, we listen to them permanently. We go where they are to take their measurings and to listen to their requirements, and then we can do our job. When we accompany the brands in developing their collections, we are very often led to work with their creative teams, since they have art directors and design offices, so we just support them in this way. In terms of technology, how do you organize the sourcing of your materials? Because I understand that you are working on materials with a high value added. Well, yes, we try and be a force of proposal, being in contact with the suppliers permanently in the development of their materials upstreams, or being present on many shows and exhibitions to try and find new materials. Concerning materials, Serge, you told me something fantastic concerning a new fiber based on starch starch and milk. Yes, I'm Serge Crutel. My structure is called Textile. You know, I've got a 20-year experience as an independent or a freelance consultant. So I have created Textile essentially for 4 activities that are the following. The first one corresponds essentially to my first profession, that was competence transfer in the textile sector. You know, we have an absolute necessity in terms of development. Also, I follow up young creators and engineers throughout France. Thirdly, I am involved in product development in terms of creation and industrial follow-up. And for the last 2 years, I've developed an activity which corresponds to the material transfer. I have written a thesis with the CNAM concerning the recycling and the transfer of that material. So for 2 years, I've had this activity concerning the recovery and the collection of those materials. And since we are talking about consumption, it is true to say that in the field of recycling, this is a very good school, because we've got original materials that are not standard, and we need characterizing them. And therefore, we are compelled to work in a sectorial spirit, with a sectorial spirit. We must take the material, transfer it. The industry must be able to transform it, process it, and make a new product out of it. So there is a whole sector and whole chain to develop, proximity chain, because we want to have a circular economy. And we want to work on products that are 100% recycled with the Le Parc weaving, a spinning company. We can produce polyamide and cotton fibers. You know, I have been working on the elastane, on the underwear sector. So the quality has been degraded. You know, we work with polyamide and so on, and well, this is the contrary of what we should do. I mean, ecologically speaking, you know, to produce stockings, for example, some years ago, we didn't use elastane, but the product was more expensive. I don't mean that we should do exactly as we did 20 years ago, but what I mean is that we should eco-design products and make them cheaper too. And also, I have developed the biosourcing for hemp, for example. And I am developing this with several industries to introduce PLA in some textiles products, such as the clothing industry, garment industry. So, of course, the price, of course, you've got to realize, that €1 for polyester, €2 for polyamides, and €4 for PLA. So we have to create new sectors, new chains. Otherwise, replacing polyester by PLA, it's inconceivable. So we've got to generate a mindset. We've got to recreate products, and we've got to give more impetus to all this. And for that, we need the designers, the creators, and people that are in parallel to the industrial consideration. I asked Sandrine to come with us this morning. Could you tell us what is the EDA reserve and how the eco-design is executed? Well, the art reserve, well, we have a mission. We want to accompany the professionals of the cultural sector for them to understand what the circular economy is. And we want to make them understand how they have contributed to that for some years now. So we try and meet the requirements of the creators. We propose materials to them that we collect from the museum, from the enterprises, and so on and so forth. So we've got wood panels, clay pots, and so on and so forth. And we have 6,000 members at the moment, creators, that work in quite a lot of different professions. There might be process designers, to create new processes, or product designers, or stage decor designers, for example. Well, we want this our organization to be a space where we collect material to be recycled. You know, we come upstream. We make sure that the materials have several lives. The designer can use it for a project, and when this project is completed, the designer can bring it back to us so as to give it a new life. That is the circular aspect of the organization. You were talking about the prices. Prices, of course, are more expensive. We want to have very cheap material to create this reflex among the creators and the consumers to come to us. You know, the idea is that since we are going to take time to choose, since we'll have time to relax and think twice, we'll save on what we'll buy. We don't want to buy for the sake of buying. We want to sort out and really select what we're going to buy. This is the idea. And to go even further, you know, I believe that now there will be a real need to recruit creators and designers that will be trained to eco-design and eco-production. And all around me, I see a lot of small initiatives. So there are a lot of initiatives to train those designers, but there should be some interconnection among all those initiatives. So our platform should be developed not only for materials but for skills. We've got 6,000 members, as I told you, that are able to eco-produce with recovered and recycled material, and that can push forward the way the large groups may consider this problem. Thank you for this precision. We have already talked about that and exchanged messages. I have noticed your specific approach, and I consider that it fits very well in the theme of this roundtable. Mr. Lawyer, well, this is a bad start, you know. I'm going to adapt myself to the situation. So I'm Pierre Hoffman. I am a lawyer specialized in intellectual property. I try and protect the logos, the creators, the designers, and so on and so forth. My problems have evolved in the last 12 years. Whether it be on the creator sector or on the society sector. 10 years ago, only the price was important. You know, 10 years ago, we were only concerned with the cost of the production. But now there has been some kind of responsibility emerging in the society. There were standards at the time, but they were not respected. But today, the chart becomes a self-censure. You know, if there is a catastrophe in Bangladesh, for example, remember the plaza, this may bear repercussions. You know, we have heard about the Fashion Pact. They self-censure them, and if they do that, that is because they are afraid of being censured by the consumers. So our lawyer's job has evolved. You know, 10 years ago, if there was dog hair, for example, in a piece of garment, that was of no importance for everybody. But today, if you find some dog hair in a garment, then that will take you to the courts, you know, and there are other problems. I mean, you are talking about co-responsibilization and co-design. Who has done that? You know, who had the idea of a project, you know? Then you go to the lawyer and you know, you consider, I mean, both creators consider that they have invented or designed the same thing. Well, so this is a real problem for the lawyers. Rachel? Well, good morning. Orb is a new world. A lot of ambition. I'm Rachel Michaud. I am the co-founder of this brand. It is a French brand for top-end leather goods, which fits with the circular economy. The principle is simple. We recover material. You know, to come back to what you said, I mean, Sandrine said, those materials have had either a first usage, that is what we call the reused material. This material has something, a nice history to tell, and we introduce this material into a creation process. And we start with this reused material, but it can also be a material that we call a degraded material, ends of series, for example, or things that come upstream the industry, or products with, you know, with defects. But we consider that artistically, creatively speaking, those products are, or those materials are interesting. So this idea came to me during a travel that I had to Japan some years ago. I had an idea for an art technique which is called kusuki, that is a Japanese technique which gives a new value to Ming broken pots, you know. They reconstitute those objects with gold filaments. And as a matter of fact, then it gets much more value than the original object. So I have federated people, I met people, and I've got 4 people working with me, coming from different horizons. This is the idea, you know, we must... Of course, there is a sector, there is a chain, but it is by federating many people and many sectors, not only the textile sector. I come from the watchmaking and sports, you know. So the idea was to pool competencies and see what works well in some sectors and, you know, apply this to other sectors of activity. Well, in the exhibitions and in those shows in general, while we are very keen on having different approaches and different visions. Well, is it something difficult to manage, François? Very good on one specialty, very well identified to a product, as the consumer is, and also at the same time have a larger vision, which makes it possible to understand the evolution of the environment. Well, that is for sure. François Mahé, that's my name. I work with Osmos Group, which is involved in professional training, vocational training, and you are a retailer too. Yes, and to answer this, I'm going to take my other camp. With my partner, we've got a concept store in the Marais area. And we have decided to open a concept store when we can distribute a number of brands. We select them, in particular from Italy, and we have also a workshop there. We have decided not to have any bargain, and we say so. We say, well, we don't make any bargain, we don't make any sales, we just select a number of pieces from stocks. We don't have any special production, and when you can find your size, fine. If there is no more, too bad. So sometimes we make more selections or than what we can buy, and sometimes we, when it is the case, we add something to what is left. You know, we embroider them, and we give a second chance to that product to be selected by our customers. And in our speech, in our discourse, when we explain that we both are creators and we've got a workshop where we work, the visitor that comes to us in our concept store immediately feels like knowing what kind of products we have designed ourselves or we have made ourselves. So there is kind of re-enchantment of our consumer. They say, well, I want to see what you have done here. I want to see what you have transformed. And this is some kind of, emotion which occurs. And it's emotion. Do you use the media embroidery, what you are going to place on a piece of garment, for example? What does it bring to you? What about the social networks? Well, social networks, we use them to produce live YouTube, for example, to make people see what we are doing. Of course, this needs availability. It needs a lot of time. It's not easy on a daily on a daily manner to do that, but it's important. I mean, to give some vision to our point of sale with that kind of social network. We have had, for example, a painter exhibition, an art exhibition some time ago. I mean, this painter visited our workshop, and it gave him some inspiration and for making or painting pictures, and we have exhibited those pictures in our concept store. So we felt later on to work together, and we have designed a cocktail dress with a black fabric and a waistcoat, and Nathalie Serrault, the painter, has decorated them later on. And those dresses and waistcoats are really fantastic. A lot of people come to us and say, well, it's nice to visit to you because we don't find all formatted products we find at the supermarkets or at the retailers. You know, they say we can spend 1 hour with you without being bored. You know, we always discover something new. We have selected, purses that are made with hog skin, and they have been processed at Millau, and they have been transformed into belts, bracelets, and wallets. So we know that this product is going to last, and it's going to evolve in time, and it will accompany the consumer that has selected it. Well, you have some material with you. Well, what's your name, by the way? Well, I'm Emile Mischer. I'm a designer and an engineer, and I'm a researcher at Humboldt in Berlin. Well, I invent machines. I work on new materials. And one of the machines, which is called Polyfluff, that is a thermoplastic recycling machine, and it works exactly on the same principle as the candy floss. It's a machine which is 1 meter in size. It's a small machine, and we obtain fibers. This is polypropylene. Could you hold your mic closer, please? Well, that is a recycled fiber, and we can use it either as such for insulation product, for example, but also as a raw material for textile. We can knit it, we can weave it. We can make the best of all its properties. And the project which has kept us busy over the last years is the following. We have been invited by a foundation, which is Arubi, to set up a permanent recycling workshop in Madagascar. We have worked with an NGO. We have selected 10 young guys that have been trained throughout the year to using our tool, but also we have trained them to design and entrepreneurship and so on, for them to develop a recycling chain. Madagascar, of course, is an interesting country because they have a lot of problems in managing the plastic wastes. But it's a country that has a very well-developed craftsmanship sector. And since sisal or raffia, the basic material, local material, are sold abroad too. You know, it happens that the local craftsmen have no more access to fibers for their own usage. The same problem prevails in Vietnam with hemp, for example. Hemp is grown in Vietnam, but the craftsmen have no access to it. It becomes more and more industrialized, and it's sold abroad, and they have no access any longer to their own
recyclage, petite échelle.
So the idea was to start a small-scale recycling network where local craftsmen could use local fibers. Of course, but you said yourself that African economies and others are often faced with waste management issues. Yes, it's a huge issue. There isn't really a recycling industry as such. And also, there's a real lack of economic security. So there are lots of independent workers who go to scrapyards or dump sites and who try to resell what they can find. But actually, so it's easier to find waste there than over here. Here we've tried to have access to waste to start recycling branches, but we were facing huge players who offered us huge volumes. We could not handle such volumes, whereas over there it's much easier to create small networks of waste collectors. For Madagascar, we had to choose one specific plastic. It had to be lawful, and we did not want to endanger the lives of youths who worked on this. So we went for the plastic that is used for aspirin packaging. And we did not go for PET, for which there are already industries. Question. Right, so congratulations for this great project. So in this show, we talk a lot about sustainable development, eco-design, short supply circuits, sustainability. But it's great also to see all the societal impact. And actually, we talked about it yesterday during our panel discussion on predictive analysis. And how can a virtuous attitude like this not be undermined by the issue of transport? That's a question. Anyway, let's listen now to Ludovic Quinault. And then you can have a discussion, guys. So I'm the chief executive of FK. Our company's been around for 20 years. So we used to be known as Skunk Funk. We are a brand based in the Basque country, and we have operations in about 20 countries, especially in Europe. We are also in North America and Central America. Now, the philosophy of our brand, which has been around for several years, 10 years, we are now going full throttle for sustainable fashion. And we really try to work in eco and societal design. Well, that's a fitting transition. Well, there's a very thin connection with what Émile just said, but it's interesting. Right. So we work with a farmers' cooperative in India. And we guarantee farmers 1 year in advance that we will purchase organic cotton. We have the GOTS certification with them, but also since 2017, the Fair Trade certification. So we're based in Spain, actually, in the Spanish Basque country. So we're the first Spanish brand which has this Fair Trade certification. Now let's talk about consumers. So we are a brand that directly interacts with consumers. And our creed is consume less, consume better. Now, where are our garments manufactured? Well, the location, the manufacturing location, is something that is becoming increasingly important. So our brand has decided to become more sustainable with an overall approach. But you're right, that's quite clear, but give us an example. Right, so global approach. It means that we also try to avoid producing any waste, zero waste. Of course, we cannot do this for all models, but in the last 5 years, part of our collection has been switched to zero waste. So we use fabric scraps for some of our products. Question, how do you arrange for the traceability of this overall scheme? Answer, well, we use certifications. For example, with our suppliers. And with this Indian cooperative, it's much easier because we can track and trace everything from the field to the factory. Now, for other products, recycled plastics, for example, we use certifications. Some independent bodies can guarantee the traceability of products. What products do you make? Question, what products do you make? Right, because we forgot to say. Answer. It's mainly women's fashion, ready to wear. So we're not in Paris, but we are outside in other parts of France. So we are in France. France, Spain, and Germany are our main markets. And Spain is really a market which culturally is very much sustainable development minded. Also, we try to be in circular economy, so we work with La Filature du Parc. We also work with a company in Spain near Valencia. We also try to work on shipment, transportation, packaging as well. We try to use bioplastics. So it's an overall approach. And also we try to avoid generating any waste. And also we try to work on the timeless aspect of products. We try to develop things that are organic and socially responsible, but we don't want them to be specific to one season. Otherwise, people will just wear it for one season and then put them away. That's why we've launched also a garment rental service to make our offer more comprehensive. Because we try to encourage people to consume less. But of course, we want the product to be used as much as possible throughout the year, thanks to this rental service. So people don't have to buy garments, they can rent them. Right, I think there was a panel discussion where we had people who are in image or reputation garments. And people, for example, hostesses do not want to wear the same clothes every day. And so a workwear supplier told us yesterday that they were trying to use a rental system. I mean, workwear image clothes are supposed to be long-lasting, but so those suppliers told us yesterday that they managed to find a system whereby clothes would be changed every 8 to 12 months. So how can you reconcile with this with the usual fashion rhetoric? Because well, people today want a strong identity and a lot of customization, but what about how can you reconcile this with long-lasting products? Answer. Well, again, we're talking here about eco-design. When you try to do that, you need to choose durable materials, but also you need to think about upcycling fabrics that can be easily reclaimed for businesses such as La Filature du Parc, for example. If you mix too many different materials or fabrics, it's difficult to reclaim them. Right, let's start a dialogue because I've talked too much, but let's listen to what do you have to say, Madam Chief Executive? What do you have to say? Well, so in the textile industry, recycling and eco-design are very important today. And today there's a big nationwide program which has been promoted by the authority of the luxury and textile industry, and so really sustainable development is now on top of its agenda. So today there are really two trends: mechanical recycling with La Filature du Parc and other players, and also chemical recycling. So today these are two different branches, which are really interesting, and we're talking here about short supply circuits. And I think that in terms of recycling and initiatives, there are lots of players in France, but there's still lots of room for new initiatives. But I think that the industry is well organized, is well structured today, and I think that you can easily find products at European and French level to meet those challenges. Well, I think there's also an issue of scale. So there are big players, for example, who can process materials. Something I did not mention earlier on is that I work in upcycling with Parisian creators. So I work with a small manufacturing workshop that works with women who have been who have had very difficult lives and who have been unemployed for a very long time. So these women first work with waste fabrics and rags, basically. And once they're sufficiently qualified, or once they are sufficiently experienced, they make garments, sewing, for example. They make clothes. And so we work with the Albert Domain Fashion College, and we usually work with one or two designers. And for example, we managed to reclaim 300 or 400 pieces. Now let me pick up on what you said. The human factor is very important here. There's a lot of storytelling and narrative about the product. What's behind the product that people buy? That's the real issue. So of course, when you do upcycling, you can also do a rethink of the way you consume, you buy garments. And our objective, for example, if you take wool as a market value, it's 1,500 euros a ton at the end of its life. If you buy cotton, it's different, and it's the same with polyamide. It's also a commercial good, and I work with La Filature du Parc on polyamides, but also with a startup that uses these fabrics to make objects. So it really shows that there are many different opportunities. And to me also, upcycling is great in terms of communication. It's a great way of rethinking things and of involving everybody in the chain. I just wanted to pick up on this. The issue of scale is a real issue, of course. For example, we had to do our pitch in front of investors who said, all right, can you take this to the industrial stage? Because 5 kilos a day, that's not much. So it's quite a tricky one, because there's the technological aspect. If you move to a higher scale, of course, you have to radically change your technology. So you have to start from scratch all over again. And also there's the issue of organization or structure. Is it better to increase the number of local manufacturing points, or is it better to have a huge factory that can handle the 30 tons of materials that are delivered every week? So we do think about this, but of course it raises a lot of questions in terms of prices. So for example, in Madagascar, we're starting to produce textiles, knitwear, semi-finished products, actually, for craftsmen. And the price issue is very difficult there. You said it, that these materials can be used for stuffing, for example. So we try to work out what the fair price would be for stuffing compared with industrial polyester that would be imported from abroad. But of course, we're talking about a times 20, times 30 factor here. I mean, you cannot possibly compete with large-scale industrial products, new products, or even recycled ones. So you need to think about, you actually need to communicate on the fact that it's a socially responsible, local, innovative, creative project. Because this has some value, but not all markets pay attention to this. In Antananarivo, the fact that these products are recycled is not really good on the local market. It's not a good thing. It's frowned upon. So actually, it's better to try and sell these products to Westerners. But again, it raises questions about the project. Do you want to add something? I just wanted to pick up on what you said. You said that the product has to be sufficiently timeless so that it can cover several seasons. But there's also the issue of social or responsible consumers. I think they have to slow down their consumption. But you know, I'm an activist, so of course. But I think that people have to buy less. A lot of people buy clothes every month, but well, I mean, a large part of the public opinion agrees with you on that. Right, and some designers also try to look at this way. The human mind is very much used to regular change. For example, with sofas. So we're talking about textile here, and so I'm sure you can imagine you can have the same ideas for garments. You can change them, change the same clothes over time instead of constantly changing. Anyone would like to weigh in on that? I'd like to react to what you said, especially you, sir. I think consumption will go down. You talked about the rental of garments, but that's an issue for lawyers, because you rent your clothes, but what do consumers do? They resell them. So there's a brand issue here. Say, for example, I bought a product from you, and I'm going to resell it online. So it's kind of recycling, but I'm going to use your brand, and you're not going to very much like it. You're saying people will consume less, but at the end of the day, it's always consumers who make the call. So these garments, who would have been thrown away before, are going to be resold 1, 2, 3, 4 times. But this raises legal issues, and as attorneys, as lawyers, we have to be quite inventive here. In the past, businesses would complain about deliveries that did not happen on time. Now it's much different for us lawyers. What if I may? Yes, sure. And then we'll give the floor to the audience. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution here. Here, for example, I represent a brand, and a brand always has a positioning. So there are different categories of consumers, and each category of consumers will be more or less tolerant about the different aspects we've mentioned. And then there are different categories of businesses, industrial companies, or small-scale producers, or my company, which is halfway through. And we offer different types of products to consumers, and consumers may decide to believe or not in our offer. But I think it's very difficult to categorize things. It's too complex. Serge, would you like to talk the floor, and then we'll ask the audience if they have any questions. Well, coming back to what you said, when you produce a material, there's something really important. So when you want to enter, for example, a local supply chain, if there's no creation involved, I think it's very difficult. For example, I work on stuffing at the moment, and I'm working on the recycling of quills and pillows. So it's basically products where you stuff mainly with 90% of polyester. Polyester is very interesting because it can be recycled, but there's a scale issue as well here. Obviously, if I cannot reuse this product in bed linen, I will have to sell it for stuffing. But it's fine because it's not a product that you see. So it will be used for other purposes to avoid the waste in materials. But you have to do this reasonably, and you have to think about the way you can reuse materials. And so that's why I think the creative, the human factors are very important. And I think that it's the best way to sell and promote your products. And I discussed this with Gilles the first time we talked about PLA. It's 4 times as expensive as polyester, but if you don't work with a designer, if you Right, and so you need to really sell this to the consumers. Is it the same in your industry? For carpets? Well, we're far from this at the moment. There's a real issue here in our industry. So we have a fiber that we use for what we call the velvet. And well, it's very difficult to recycle all this. Now, there are different industries, but they are not used very much, and they're quite expensive. And consumers are not ready to pay for this and to participate in something more responsible. We've been trying to find solutions for many years, but as you said, it's all about, baby steps. We need to find small solutions, but first we need to make our customers aware. I think you're right to talk about small solutions and large solutions. We've seen this. Well, thank you very much for being here anyway. Right, we still have 3-4 minutes to go. Anyone in the audience would like to ask a question? So the ladies and gentlemen who've been listening to you, do you have any questions for our panelists? Do you have any question? It's been really a broad overview. No questions, no comments? Okay, thank you. Well, that's a thank you, a collective thank you to all of you. Thank you very much for taking part in this panel discussion. I hope that you now have this sense of belonging, and I hope that you can network and exchange information. I think it's essential in a trade show. Thank you very much for attending. The next panel discussion will be starting at 11:30, and I think you're also taking part. It's about sportswear and athleisure, new industries for fashion brands. So thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. Thank you for sharing your individual but also collective experiences. I wish you a great show. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.